Some had strange designs, weak performance, and engineering choices that made the owner question what they were thinking.
In the 1940s, some trucks were built to fail. These are the worst pickups of the decade, gathered for heavy work. These pickups sometimes became more trouble than they were worth. After a long drive, it's good to look back. Every road tells its own story. In 1946, the guns fell silent, and America began the massive shift back to peace. But In 1946, Crosley introduced this. It was a pickup, but not as we know it.
The Crosley pickup looked almost unreal next to the giants of its time. Tiny body, narrow stance, lightweight construction, and a small engine that seemed more suited for a motorcycle than a work truck. At first glance, it didn't look like a serious machine at all. It looked like something scaled down by mistake. But this wasn't a mistake. It was a solution to a very specific moment in history. After World War II, America was facing a massive demand for new vehicles. People had money saved, factories were transitioning from military production back to civilian cars, and buyers were desperate for anything with wheels. But traditional trucks were expensive, heavy, and fuel-hungry. Crosley stepped in with a radical idea. What if a pickup didn't need to be big? The result was a vehicle weighing around 500 kilograms, a fraction of a normal American truck of the era. It used a tiny four-cylinder engine with just 26 horsepower. In a world where V8 engines were becoming the symbol of American automotive power, the Crosley felt almost invisible by comparison. On paper, it sounds like a weakness. In reality, it was a different philosophy entirely. This truck was not built for farms or heavy industry. It was built for light urban work, small deliveries, and personal utility. It could carry tools, groceries, boxes, and light cargo with surprising efficiency. It was cheap to run, easy to park, and simple to maintain. But America in 1946 was not thinking small. The country was entering an era of growth, power, and expansion. Bigger houses, bigger roads, bigger cars. A pickup truck was expected to look strong, feel strong, and behave like a machine capable of serious labor. And the Crosley simply did not match that image. Next to a full-size Chevrolet or Ford pickup, it looked almost fragile. Even its cargo bed seemed more like an extension of a small car than a real truck platform. One owner famously joked that it could carry your tools, your groceries, and your patience, but not much else. And yet, technically, it did its job. The lightweight construction made it efficient. The small engine, while slow, was economical. And in tight city environments, it actually had advantages over larger trucks. It could go where big vehicles struggled and cost far less to operate. The real problem was perception. In the American truck culture of the time, size meant capability, power meant trust, and anything too small was immediately dismissed as inadequate, no matter how practical it might have been in reality. So the Crosley pickup became a contradiction. It was functional but not respected, efficient but not desired, clever but not convincing to the average buyer. Most customers simply wanted a real truck, and in their minds, real meant big. As a result, sales remained limited, and many examples were used heavily until they disappeared. Small utility vehicles rarely survive in large numbers because they are often worked hard, not preserved. But history has a strange way of reevaluating ideas. Today, the 1946 Crosley pickup is seen differently, not as a failure, but as an early attempt at something the market would only understand decades later. Compact utility vehicles designed for efficiency rather than brute force. Modern small pickups and urban utility vehicles follow a philosophy that Crosley experimented with long before it became acceptable. It was not ahead in performance, it was ahead in thinking. And that is why this tiny 1946 truck still stands out, not because it tried to be big, but because it dared to ask whether a pickup really needed to be.
In 1947, America's automotive industry was standing at a strange crossroads. The war was over. Factories were switching back to civilian production, and millions of buyers were finally able to purchase new vehicles again after years of shortages. Expectations were rising fast. Cars were becoming more refined, more comfortable, and more modern almost month by month. Into this rapidly changing world came the 1947 Chevrolet AK Series pickup, a truck that today is admired for its classic beauty, but at the time it was already showing the limits of pre-war engineering thinking carried into a new era. At first glance, it had the right presence. The design was clean, rounded, and far more visually polished than earlier 1930s trucks. Chevrolet clearly understood that styling mattered more now. The front end looked more integrated, the proportions more balanced, and the overall shape had a sense of confidence that made it instantly recognizable. But once you moved past the design, the reality was very different. Because under that elegant exterior, the Chevrolet AK Series pickup was still fundamentally a pre-war style work machine. And that meant compromise in almost every driving aspect. Steering, for example, was one of the most noticeable limitations. It used a heavy, slow, mechanical system with minimal assistance. At low speeds, especially when parking or maneuvering in tight spaces, the driver had to put real physical effort into every movement. The steering wheel didn't respond quickly, it responded with delay, as if the truck needed a moment to understand your intention. Then there was braking. The truck relied on drum brakes at all four corners, a standard setup for the era, but one that already felt strained under heavier loads. On flat ground, braking was manageable, but once the bed was loaded, stopping distances increased significantly, and pedal effort became noticeably higher. In wet conditions, or after repeated use, brake fade was not uncommon. The suspension system told the same story. Leaf springs, simple and strong, were designed for durability and cargo capacity, not comfort. That meant every uneven surface, every pothole, every rural dirt road was transmitted directly into the cabin. There was very little isolation between road and driver. Inside the cabin, the experience was even more revealing. Space was limited, seating was upright, and ergonomics were almost non-existent by modern standards. The dashboard was basic, instrumentation minimal, and controls were placed purely for function rather than comfort or ease of use. Visibility was another challenge. The windshield was relatively narrow, and thick structural elements created blind spots that demanded constant attention from the driver. On long trips, especially at highway speeds, fatigue came quickly, not because the truck was unstable, but because it required constant engagement. One driver from the period famously summarized the experience in a way that still defines the truck today. It was a great truck until you had to drive it all day. And that sentence captures the truth of the AK series better than any technical specification sheet ever could. Because this was not a vehicle designed to disappear under the driver, it was a machine that demanded participation. Everything about it was built around durability first. The ladder frame chassis was strong and simple. The engine options, including Chevrolet's reliable inline-6 and later V8 configurations in related variants, were designed for longevity rather than refinement. Maintenance was straightforward, parts were accessible, and repairs could be performed in basic workshop conditions without specialized equipment. For farms, construction sites, and rural delivery work, the Chevrolet AK Series pickup made perfect sense. It could take abuse, carry loads, and continue working in conditions that would challenge more delicate vehicles.
In that environment, comfort was not a priority, reliability was. But the world outside that environment was changing quickly. Competitors like Ford Motor Company and General Motors were beginning to slowly improve ride quality, steering precision, and cabin comfort. Even small refinements, slightly better hydraulic systems, better seating, better visibility, were enough to make newer vehicles feel significantly more modern. Against that backdrop, the AK series began to feel like a machine from the previous chapter of automotive history, even while it was still in production. And yet that is exactly what gives it its importance today. Because what looks like lack of comfort now was actually a clear reflection of what trucks were actually meant to be. Tools first, vehicles second. There was no illusion of luxury, no attempt to disguise its purpose. It was honest, direct, and mechanically transparent. It didn't try to soften the experience, it tried to survive it. And that is why the 1947 Chevrolet AK Series pickup remains so fascinating today. Not because it was comfortable, but because it represents a moment when driving a truck meant accepting every vibration, every noise, and every ounce of mechanical truth the machine had to offer. In a world where trucks are now quiet, refined, and almost car-like, the AK series feels like a reminder of something much more physical and much more demanding.
In 1948, the American pickup market was changing faster than most people realized. The war was over, industry was shifting back to civilian life, and buyers were starting to expect vehicles that could do more than just survive harsh conditions. Into this transitional moment came the 1948 Willys Jeep pickup, a machine that looked simple on paper but carried a very specific and uncompromising engineering philosophy underneath its body. Built by Willys Overland, it was never designed to compete with comfort-oriented trucks or emerging civilian-friendly pickups. Instead, it was a direct descendant of wartime engineering thinking, and that legacy is exactly what defined its strengths and its problems. At first glance, the Willys Jeep pickup looked compact, almost harmless. Small proportions, simple body lines, minimal chrome, and a no-nonsense stance. But the moment it started moving, the illusion disappeared. This was not a truck built to disappear into the background. It was built to be felt. The biggest contradiction of the Willys Jeep pickup was its dual identity. Off-road, it was in its element. On-road, it could feel almost primitive compared to competitors. That contrast wasn't a flaw added later, it was baked into the design from the beginning. The short wheelbase is the first thing that explains everything. A short wheelbase improves off-road articulation and maneuverability in tight terrain, but it also reduces stability at higher speeds. On highways or rough paved roads, that meant constant micro-corrections from the driver. The truck didn't track smoothly, it demanded attention, almost like it was asking the driver to stay alert at all times. Then comes the suspension. The leaf spring setup was extremely strong, extremely simple, and extremely unforgiving. It was designed for load bearing and durability, not comfort absorption. Every bump, every pothole, every uneven surface was transferred directly into the cabin. There was very little filtering between road and driver. Inside, the experience continued the same theme. The cabin was tight, almost compact to the point of discomfort for taller drivers. Seating was upright and utilitarian, with minimal padding. The dashboard was functional, not ergonomic. Every control felt like it was placed for mechanical efficiency, not human comfort. Visibility was decent in some directions due to its upright design, but the overall driving experience still felt physically demanding. Long trips were not relaxing, they were active tasks. Drivers had to stay engaged, constantly adjusting and responding to the road.
Under the hood, the engine followed the same philosophy. The small four-cylinder unit was simple, reliable, and easy to maintain, but it was never designed for effortless cruising or heavy highway loads. When the truck was fully loaded or climbing inclines, the engine had to work continuously, often staying in higher RPM ranges for extended periods. One mechanic from the era reportedly described it in a way that perfectly captures its nature. It doesn't care how comfortable you are, it only cares if it keeps moving. That sentence is almost a design summary for the Willys Jeep pickup. Because this truck was not trying to please the driver, it was trying to complete the task. Off-road, that philosophy became its greatest strength. Mud, rocks, dirt roads, and rural terrain were where it truly came alive. The simple drivetrain, lightweight, and mechanical honesty made it extremely capable in environments where more complex vehicles could struggle or fail. But on paved roads, especially longer distances, the same characteristics became limitations. Compared to emerging civilian pickups from Ford Motor Company or General Motors, which were beginning to prioritize smoother ride quality and better road manners, the Willys felt raw and demanding. And that is where its personality problem truly emerges. It wasn't confused in engineering terms, it was perfectly consistent. The problem was that the world around it was changing. Drivers were slowly expecting trucks to be not just tools, but also comfortable transportation machines. The Willys refused that evolution. It stayed loyal to its original purpose, even as expectations shifted away from it. One owner famously summarized the experience in a brutally honest way. It's not something you drive casually, it's something you operate with respect. That word operate is important because it separates this vehicle from the growing idea of comfortable driving that was beginning to define post-war automotive culture. Maintenance, however, was one of its hidden strengths. Because of its simplicity, the Willys Jeep pickup could often be repaired in basic workshop conditions. There were fewer complex systems to fail, fewer electronics, none by modern standards, and a straightforward mechanical layout that rewarded practical skills over specialized tools. Still, its limitations were always present. Long highway drives were tiring, noise levels were high, comfort was minimal, and compared to more refined trucks, it felt like a machine from an earlier philosophy of engineering rather than a step forward into modern driving comfort. But that is exactly why it remains significant today. Because the Willys Jeep pickup represents a pure version of a truck that no longer exists in the same form, a machine built entirely around durability, function, and mechanical honesty, without compromise towards comfort expectations. It wasn't smooth, it wasn't quiet, it wasn't comfortable, but it was absolutely, unmistakably committed to its purpose. And in a world that increasingly demands compromise between comfort and capability, the Willys Jeep pickup remains a reminder of what happens when a machine refuses to compromise at all.
In 1946, Ford pickups were already a familiar sight across post-war America. Simple, rugged, and dependable, they represented the backbone of rural transport and small business logistics. But in the background of that standard production story, something far more unusual was happening. Something built not in Ford's own factories, but by an outside specialist trying to push the limits of what a pickup truck could become. That machine was the 1946 Ford pickup Marmon-Harrington 4x4 conversion, a modified version of Ford's civilian truck transformed into a four-wheel drive system by Marmon-Harrington. And at first glance, it looked like the ultimate solution for harsh American terrain. The idea behind it was simple but ambitious. Take a standard Ford pickup and give it genuine off-road capability. In 1946, factory-built 4x4 trucks were extremely rare, so conversions like this filled a very specific gap in the market. Farmers, oil workers, forestry crews, and utility companies needed vehicles that could go where normal rear-wheel drive trucks simply couldn't. The result was a machine that looked familiar but behaved very differently underneath. The added Marmon-Harrington system introduced a front driving axle, transfer case, additional drive shafts, and reinforced components to handle the stress of powering all four wheels. On paper, it transformed a regular work truck into something far more capable in mud, snow, and uneven terrain. In real-world conditions, the advantages were immediately noticeable. Where standard pickups struggled for traction, the 4x4 Ford could push forward with confidence. In rural areas, construction sites, and undeveloped roads, this was a serious advantage, sometimes even a necessity. But engineering upgrades rarely come without trade-offs. The first and most obvious issue was weight. All the additional hardware, axles, shafts, transfer components, added significant mass to the vehicle. This extra weight reduced acceleration, increased fuel consumption, and placed more strain on the engine, which was still based on relatively modest post-war Ford powertrains. What started as a simple lightweight work truck became something heavier, more complex, and more mechanically demanding. The second issue was drivability on normal roads. While the 4x4 system excelled in low traction environments, it introduced additional mechanical resistance when not fully needed. Steering felt heavier, driveline noise increased, and the overall driving experience became less refined compared to standard rear-wheel drive versions. And then came the most underestimated problem of all: maintenance complexity. Unlike factory-built trucks, the Ford pickup Marmon-Harrington 4x4 conversion was essentially a hybrid system assembled from different engineering philosophies. Ford provided the base vehicle, while Marmon-Harrington integrated the drivetrain conversion. This meant more components, more joints, more lubrication points, and more potential failure areas. One owner from the era summarized the experience with blunt honesty. It would go anywhere, but you had to hope it would come back in one piece. That sentence captures the paradox perfectly, because in the right conditions, the truck felt almost unstoppable. Mud, snow, and rough terrain became manageable obstacles instead of dead ends. For the first time, many operators could reach areas that were previously inaccessible by conventional pickups. But in everyday use, especially when conditions were not extreme, the added complexity felt less like an advantage and more like a responsibility. And that is where the illusion of simplicity broke down. The truck looked like a straightforward Ford pickup from the outside, but underneath, it was a layered mechanical system that required care, attention, and understanding far beyond what most standard owners expected. Compared with standard Ford production pickups of the time from Ford Motor Company, the Marmon-Harrington version was clearly more specialized. It was not meant to replace the regular truck. It was meant to serve a very specific niche where traction mattered more than simplicity. And in that niche, it was extremely effective. But niche vehicles rarely become mainstream. Today, the 1946 Ford pickup Marmon-Harrington 4x4 conversion represents an early chapter in American four-wheel drive development. It represents a time when off-road capability was not yet factory standard, and innovation came from external engineering companies pushing existing platforms beyond their original limits. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't simple, and it definitely wasn't cheap to maintain. But when the terrain turned against you, it was one of the few machines that could still keep moving forward. And in the world of working trucks, that sometimes mattered more than anything else. In 1947, American trucks were still living in two worlds at once. On one side, you had pure work machines, simple, rugged, and brutally honest. On the other side, manufacturers were slowly experimenting with style, comfort, and passenger car influence. Right in the middle of that transition appeared something almost forgotten today: the 1947 Hudson Big Boy pickup, one of the most unusual and rare interpretations of a post-war American truck. Built by Hudson Motor Car Company, the Big Boy pickup was not designed to look like a conventional farm tool or construction vehicle. It carried the design language of Hudson passenger cars: sleek lines, balanced proportions, and a level of visual refinement that immediately separated it from the more utilitarian trucks of its time. At first glance, it almost doesn't register as a work truck. The proportions are too elegant, the styling too smooth, the overall presence too close to a passenger car. And that was exactly the point, and also the problem. Because in 1947, truck buyers were not asking for elegance, they were asking for endurance. The Hudson Big Boy pickup sat in a very unusual position in the market. While competitors like Ford Motor Company and General Motors focused on proven truck durability and simple mechanical layouts, Hudson tried to bring its passenger car identity into the utility segment. That decision created an immediate identity conflict. On one hand, the truck had visual appeal. It looked refined, modern, and even slightly upscale compared to the blunt, boxy shapes of traditional pickups. On the other hand, buyers stepping into a dealership in the late 1940s were often farmers, tradesmen, and small business owners who valued one thing above all else: toughness. And elegance did not automatically translate into toughness in their eyes. One early reaction reportedly captured the confusion perfectly. It looks like it should be parked in front of a house, not a barn. Technically, the Big Boy pickup was still a working truck. Underneath the styling, it used conventional mechanical components of the era: simple suspension systems, sturdy ladder frame construction, and straightforward drivetrain layouts designed for serviceability. Hudson was not building a fragile vehicle, it was building a refined one. But perception often matters more than engineering on the showroom floor. Because in 1947, truck design carried a psychological expectation: visible strength. High ground clearance, exposed rugged components, and a no-nonsense appearance were part of the trust equation. Buyers needed to see durability before they believed in it. The Hudson Big Boy pickup broke that visual contract. Instead of looking like a tool, it looked like a styled product, and that alone made some buyers hesitate. Inside the cabin, the influence of Hudson's passenger car philosophy became even more noticeable. Compared to many pickups of the era, the interior felt slightly more refined, with better attention to layout and comfort. But even this advantage didn't fully solve the core issue. Truck buyers were not prioritizing comfort in the way later generations would. They still wanted simplicity, not refinement. And simplicity was something competitors delivered more clearly. One mechanic from the period reportedly summarized the situation with dry honesty: "It's a nice truck, but it feels like it's trying to impress you instead of work for you." That sentence gets to the heart of the Big Boy pickup's challenge. Because mechanically it was capable, structurally it was sound, but emotionally it was out of sync with its audience. And then came the most important factor: price and positioning. The Hudson Big Boy pickup was not a mass market experiment. It sat in a niche space where production volumes were limited, distribution was smaller, and awareness was low compared to giants from Ford and General Motors. In a market where truck buyers were extremely pragmatic, any additional cost without obvious functional benefit was difficult to justify. As a result, the Big Boy pickup never achieved widespread adoption. It remained rare even in its own time, and over the decades, survival rates became even lower. Many were simply used as working vehicles until they wore out, while others disappeared as tastes shifted towards more conventional pickups. Today, the 1947 Hudson Big Boy pickup is remembered not as a failure of engineering, but as a rare design experiment, an attempt to merge passenger car elegance with pickup truck functionality before the market was ready to accept that combination. It wasn't the toughest truck of its era, it wasn't the most practical, and it certainly wasn't the most common. But it remains one of the clearest examples of what happens when automotive styling moves faster than the expectations of the people it is built for.
In 1949, American rural transportation was still clearly divided into two worlds. On one side stood heavy-duty farm tractors built for raw pulling power and agricultural punishment. On the other stood full-size pickup trucks from companies like Ford Motor Company and General Motors, designed to move goods, people, and materials across roads. Between those two categories, there was nothing, at least nothing that made sense, until the 1949 Crosley Farm-O-Road appeared. Built by Crosley Motors, this machine wasn't just an unusual pickup, it was an attempt to merge two completely different engineering philosophies into one compact, affordable platform. A vehicle that could drive on public roads like a truck, but also work on farms like a tractor. In theory, it sounded like the perfect solution for small rural owners who could not afford multiple machines. In reality, it became one of the strangest compromises ever sold in post-war America. At first glance, the Crosley Farm-O-Road looks like something that escaped classification. It's too small to be a real truck, too simple to be a proper tractor, and too unusual to be a conventional utility vehicle. Even its proportions feel uncertain, as if the engineers were trying to decide what it should become while building it. And that uncertainty defines its entire story. The core idea behind it was actually very logical for its time. Many small farms in post-war America were struggling economically. Buying a full tractor and a separate pickup truck was expensive. Maintenance costs were high, storage space was limited, and equipment ownership was a major financial burden. Crosley's answer was radical: combine both roles into one lightweight machine. On paper, the concept had real appeal. The Farm-O-Road could travel on roads under its own power, transport small loads, and then switch to agricultural tasks when needed. It represented efficiency, consolidation, and cost reduction, all important themes in the late 1940s. But engineering reality quickly introduced limits. The biggest limitation was power. The small Crosley engine, designed for economy and simplicity, could not deliver the torque levels expected from farm machinery. While it was adequate for light transportation duties, agricultural work demanded sustained pulling force under heavy load, something the platform was never truly designed to provide. On the road, the situation was different, but not dramatically better. Compared with even entry-level pickups from Ford Motor Company and General Motors, the Farm-O-Road felt underpowered and light. It could move efficiently at moderate speeds, but acceleration and load-carrying confidence were limited. In farm mode, things became even more complicated. The vehicle could handle basic light-duty tasks, small towing jobs, simple hauling, and minimal field work, but it was constantly operating at the edge of its capability. The moment conditions became difficult, such as heavier soil resistance or increased load, the system revealed its compromised nature. The suspension and chassis design also reflected this dual identity problem. Built for light weight, the structure lacked the rigidity and mass typically associated with agricultural machinery. This improved fuel efficiency and road handling, but reduced stability and traction in demanding terrain. And then there was the psychological problem, arguably the most important one. Farmers and rural buyers did not just evaluate machines based on function, they evaluated them based on trust. A tractor was expected to be strong, slow, and unstoppable in the field. A truck was expected to be capable, stable, and proven on the road. The Farm-O-Road did not clearly belong to either category, and that created hesitation. It wasn't just different, it was unclear. One owner reportedly described it with simple honesty. "It's useful, but I never fully knew what it was supposed to be." That sentence captures the identity problem perfectly, because the Crosley Farm-O-Road was not rejected because it failed in a single obvious way. It was questioned because it succeeded partially in two roles without fully satisfying either. Mechanically, Crosley focused on simplicity above all else. The design prioritized lightweight construction, low fuel consumption, and minimal complexity. Maintenance was relatively straightforward, and the machine could be serviced without advanced equipment. For small rural users with limited resources, this was an important advantage. But simplicity came at a cost. There was no engineering margin for extreme conditions, no redundancy for heavy agricultural stress, no excess power for difficult terrain. Every part of the design was optimized for efficiency, not endurance under punishment. Compared to dedicated tractors or full-size pickups from Ford Motor Company and General Motors, the Farm-O-Road always felt like it was operating in a middle zone, never fully relaxed, never fully confident in either environment. And yet, this is exactly what makes it so interesting today, because while it failed to dominate either market, it represents a very early attempt at multi-role utility design, an idea that modern engineering would later revisit in far more refined forms. Today's utility vehicles, compact off-roaders, and crossover concepts all carry echoes of this same philosophy. One platform, multiple roles. The difference is that modern versions have enough power, electronics, and engineering refinement to actually balance those roles successfully. The Farm-O-Road did not, but it tried anyway. It wasn't strong enough to replace a tractor, it wasn't capable enough to replace a truck, but it was bold enough to exist in between them. And in automotive history, sometimes the most interesting machines are not the ones that succeed, but the ones that ask questions too early and answer them imperfectly.
In 1948, the American pickup market was no longer just about survival and basic utility. The war was over, roads were improving, and buyers were slowly beginning to expect something more than pure mechanical endurance. Yet some trucks still carried the DNA of an earlier era, machines built first for strength and only secondarily for comfort. One of the clearest examples of that transition was the 1948 Dodge B-Series Pilot House pickup. Produced by Dodge under the Chrysler umbrella, the B-Series was designed with durability as its central promise. It was meant to be a dependable workhorse for farms, construction, and rural delivery routes. But in achieving that rugged identity, it also inherited a driving experience that, even in its own time, already felt heavy and uncompromising. At first glance, the Dodge B-Series Pilot House pickup looked solid and serious. The Pilot House cab design was actually one of its key talking points. Dodge promoted improved visibility with a larger cab glass area compared to earlier trucks. For the late 1940s, this was a meaningful step forward. But visibility alone did not define how the truck felt to operate. Because once the engine started and the truck began to move, the character changed immediately. Steering was heavy, slow, and required constant physical effort, especially at low speeds. There was no power assistance, and the mechanical linkage demanded strength from the driver in parking maneuvers or tight farm roads. It didn't feel like guiding a light vehicle, it felt like controlling mass. Ride quality followed the same philosophy. The suspension system was built with thick, durable components designed to survive constant loading. Leaf springs handled weight effectively, but they did almost nothing to isolate the cabin from road imperfections. On rough surfaces, every bump traveled directly into the chassis and then into the driver's body. This is where the old-fashioned feeling became obvious, even compared with emerging post-war competitors. By 1948, some manufacturers like Ford Motor Company and General Motors were beginning to gradually improve ride refinement and drivability. Even small changes in suspension tuning and steering geometry made newer trucks feel less exhausting to operate over long distances. But the Dodge B-Series stayed committed to strength over comfort. Inside the cabin, the experience remained utilitarian. Seating was upright, cushioning was minimal, and ergonomics were secondary to durability. Everything was built to last, not to pamper the driver. For short work cycles, this wasn't a major issue, but for long working days, farm routes, delivery schedules, or construction runs, the fatigue accumulated quickly. One driver from the era summed it up in a way that still defines the truck today. It doesn't feel like a truck you drive, it feels like something you operate. And that statement captures the essence of the Dodge B-Series Pilot House pickup. Mechanically, however, the truck was extremely capable for its time. The chassis was strong, the drivetrain was simple, and the overall construction prioritized long-term durability over refinement. It was built to carry loads, endure abuse, and remain serviceable in rural environments where repair infrastructure was limited. This made it highly respected in work environments. Farms, rural businesses, and industrial users valued its toughness. It could take punishment that would shorten the life of lighter vehicles. But respect did not always translate into enjoyment. Because while the B-Series was strong, it demanded something from the driver in return: effort. And that is where its personality becomes clear. It wasn't designed to feel easy. It was designed to feel dependable. Yet, in a rapidly modernizing post-war market where comfort was slowly becoming part of the equation, that distinction began to matter more than ever. Today, the 1948 Dodge B-Series Pilot House pickup stands as a reminder of a transitional moment in truck history. It sits between two eras, the raw, pre-comfort work machines of the past and the increasingly refined pickups that would define the future. It wasn't fragile, it wasn't advanced, and it definitely wasn't gentle. But it was built with one clear purpose in mind, and it never compromised on it.